Yeah, come on then. Let's get started, guys.
All right, cool. All right. Welcome, everyone. Match Day 365 podcast as of now, although that's going to change soon at some point with a different name. Hope you all had a great weekend, had a good time watching the games this weekend. But we have something special for you today. We are going to run through all 20 of the teams and give you our best player from each team. So we each have our separate lists, so there's going to be a good bit of debate. But there also will be some teams where, we're unanimous on the top players, so there shouldn't be too much debate. So I'll just get right into it. So first up, we're going to do alphabetical order, Arsenal. So
I think this was one of the tougher ones.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and get started with Arsenal. So I have Partey. I know he hasn't really played much for Arsenal, but I was also debating Saka as well. I had a few guys. Also, Aubameyang, even though he's been poor this year, in the past, his record speaks for itself. But I don't know. I just feel like when Partey is in the team, they're a completely different team. So that's why I went with him.
Yeah, I had Partey as an honourable mention, along with Tierney as well, because I just think he's a brilliant player. But for me, it had to be Aubameyang. Obviously, he hasn't done too well this season. He got 5 in 17, which isn't terrible, but obviously for a team like Arsenal, for his standards, isn't great. But you can't look past his past few seasons there. I think he's won 2. Has he won 2 Golden Boots in a row now, or he's been there and thereabouts?
I don't think he's won 2.
Yeah, I think even despite his performances this season, he still has to be top for me. Yeah, remember there was a stat, I think, last season, which was something like without his goals, they would be 16th or doing terribly in the league. So I think because he's been so important, for me, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang has to be number 1. Although Partey, as you say, is a brilliant player.
I've gone Aubameyang as well. Similar reasons to Amesy in that last season, obviously, he was immense. And I think he was going through, I've heard a few rumours that he's been going through some personal issues with his mum recently, which I think is obviously tough for someone to take. So if you're looking at his ability, I think it's best to look at his performances last season. And obviously, if he can't then pick this form back up, then maybe you consider the likes of Partey and Tierney, who I think are improving a lot. And are especially Tierney actually, and I did hear Mikey, you mentioned Saka, and I think he's improving rapidly as well. So I think players like this are going to come into the conversation for me in the next season or so. But I think while Aubameyang has still got that quality, for me it's Aubameyang.
I think this is a good one to show that this list is the best player at each club. It's not like the best player this season, because that would probably be Tierney or Saka. But just best player overall. Do you think we can agree with Aubameyang? Are you right with that, Mikey? Or
I have no problems with agreeing on Aubameyang. The reason I didn't go with Aubameyang is because if he was on a poor run of form for 5 or 10 games, obviously I could see him snapping out of it. But I think it's just the fact that it's been over a half a season now. But at the same time, we all have seen how many goals he scored the past decade. So I have no issue with that. So Aston Villa, right?
Yeah.
Easiest one, surely, along with Palace. I think Grealish is far and away their best player.
Yeah.
I've got Grealish. I'd like to give an honourable mention to Emi Martinez in goal, just because he is a fantastic keeper. But if they didn't have a world-class player like Grealish, who he creates more chances than anyone else in the league, while also being incredibly influential. He's obviously their captain as well. So if they didn't have him, I think Emi Martinez would be a shoe in there as well. But for me, obviously, Grealish.
He was my honourable mention as well. I think he's definitely one of the best keepers in the league. But that's probably the easiest club to do.
They do have a lot of good players. I feel bad because they do have a lot of good players that could get honourable mentions. But obviously Grealish is a level above everyone else. So
this video is going to be 10 minutes. Keep going at this rate.
Yeah. Let's see. Brighton.
All right, I'll start off then. For me, Yves Bissouma is their best player in central midfield. There are a couple of shouts. I'm sure you two will mention Dunk and potentially Lamptey as well. But for me, Bissouma is a brilliant player and he's only getting better. He's so quick. He's so strong. He can keep the ball. He can progress the ball. I think he's got it all. Yes, that's why he's number one for me.
I went Basuma as well. Dunk was also an honorable mention, but I think what put Basuma over the edge for me is that, especially at a club like Brighton with one of those bottom like 5 or 6 teams, it's so rare to have a player like him, like a guy in the midfield like that who can really like manage the game. So I went Basuma as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite shocked that all three of us have gone for Basuma here. I thought one of you two would go either Dunk or Lamptey, as Amesy mentioned. That was my top three. For me, it was only really
for Dunk. I would never go for Dunk.
Yeah, I thought actually, yeah, obviously as Palace fans, maybe I shouldn't be surprised that neither of you went for Dunk, but yeah, I mean, for me, I was just debating between Basuma and Dunk. I think Lamptey's shown flashes of brilliance, but obviously he's had a couple injuries this season, so I'm waiting on that consistency that I've seen from Basuma, especially this season, and from Dunk over the last few seasons. But yeah, Basuma, I think he controls the play really well. I think he's the kind of midfielder that not only Brighton would love to have. I think a lot of the big 6 clubs would love to have him in controlling the midfield in their teams as well. So I think for me, it's Basuma. So.
Yeah, you could definitely see him. You definitely see him getting a Højbjerg type move to a top 6 club, where I think he'd do well. But who's next up then?
Yeah, I was going to add I could see him going to Arsenal this summer. Next up, Burnley. I'll start. I had Nick Pope. I know Tarkowski is a good shout. I mean, he's obviously a really good center back. He's been rumored of a big move. I don't know. I just feel like Nick Pope is just always for Burnley coming up in big games, in big moments. And I think he has been a little bit inconsistent over the past couple of years. But, yeah, I just think he's saved so many points for Burnley, and every point for them obviously counts. So, yeah, it's Nick Pope.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was between 3. I had on a short list of Pope, Tarkowski, and Ben Mee, the captain. I think that centre-back partnership has proved really effective. And I think at the start of the season, when you saw one of them or both of them, I think at one time drop out with injury, you noticed the difference in Burnley's results. For me, I do also have Nick Pope. Just because I think he's a good goalkeeper, and I know he's been inconsistent over the last few seasons, but especially this season, I think he's stepped up and put in some really good performances, and I think that's what you want in a goalkeeper. You don't want a keeper who's going to come in with an error every other week, but make some world class saves while he's at it. I think for me, I like the consistency of Pope, and I like him as a player. So yeah, I've got Nick Pope.
Yeah, I was looking at, as you say, that trio. Well, more so Pope and Tarkowski. I did have Pope at first, and then I looked into Tarkowski's stats a bit. And obviously, as a centre back, you've got to kind of defend and also play the ball. In a Burnley side, there isn't as much kind of ball playing from their centre backs, so a lot of his role is just defensive, just defensive actions, which he is absolutely brilliant at. I rate him so highly among the centre backs in this league. So I actually had Tarkowski, but it was pretty much neck and neck. So I think we'll settle for Pope. Brilliant keeper.
Yeah, now you mentioned Tarkowski and me. I think it's crazy that if one or both of them were to go down, then Burnley would be absolutely screwed because they just have no depth at all. So
yeah, I mean, we saw that at the start of the season where they didn't have either of them. Tarkowski was rumored to be going, and they said he had an injury, and Ben Mee was injured, and they looked in real trouble. But yeah, 3 brilliant players there, right at their core.
Right. Moving on, we got Chelsea. Somebody else want to start with this one?
I'll go. For me, it's Thiago Silva at the back. I think we actually touched on it in one of the last podcast we did, where we spoke about how their defensive they've improved a lot defensively this season. I think that's mainly down to bringing in Thiago Silva. I think although he's getting on a little bit, I think he's 36 now, which is actually really old to be still playing at a top level, especially in a league like the Premier League. This was a tough one for me, actually. I had quite a few names that I thought about bringing in, but obviously you would have thought Werner or maybe Havertz would be one of the names on this list. They haven't impressed. So for me, I think Thiago Silva's just done well at the back for them. He's transformed them defensively. So yeah, for me, I've gone Thiago Silva.
Yeah, I want Silva as well. I think it was tough because Chelsea do have a lot of good players, but I gave Silva the nudge because I think he's their most important player. And I know this list isn't most important players, but I just think when he came in, he transformed the defense, like you said. So that's why I gave him the edge.
Yeah, it's Chelsea's an interesting one because they've got loads of quality players, but for me, it wasn't as easy to pick out someone who's just that kind of step above. Because you'd say, if you ask a Chelsea fan who their best player is this season, I expect a lot of them will say Mount or Hudson-Odoi even.
Zuma as well.
Zuma, yeah, exactly. But for me, it was between two. It was between Thiago Silva and Kante. Obviously, everyone knows how good Kante is. I think he's getting a bit too much disrespect recently because I just think he's so good at his role, winning the ball and then retaining the ball. But I actually did agree with you two, and I went for Thiago Silva. He's still putting up amazing numbers defensively. As you say, Mikey, he changed around their defence. And he's also great on the ball as well, which obviously a top six club needs.
Yeah, very composed class centre half.
Yeah, and it's funny that Chelsea spent all that money this summer on attacking players, but we're all agreeing that Thiago Silva is their best player.
Yeah, and he was free as well. Free transfer, and all the others cost them millions and millions, and he's the one that's made the biggest impact.
Gary Cahill type beat.
Facts. Moving on, Crystal Palace. I don't think there's any debate here. I think we all have Zaha.
Yes. So to prepare for this video, I actually had a look on YouTube to see if anyone else had done this, and there's a YouTuber called Sharky who had done this with his mate, and Sharky says Zaha, and his mate said, "I'm gonna go for Luka Milivojevic," and I could not believe what I just heard. I honestly could not believe it. Obviously, it's Zaha. That was an outrageous shout.
The only reason people must say that is because they look at Luka's goal tallies from like 2017, 2018, and he's scoring all those pens, and it's like, oh yeah, he's a midfielder.
Yeah, I think it was like last year. So they clearly seen he got like a 10-goal season, then a 9-goal season or something. And he actually was playing better, just in general back then. But no, nowhere near Wilfried Zaha. He's the best player of all time for Crystal Palace. No, just of all time.
Should have left it there, yeah. Best player of all time, hands down. I mean, yeah, for me, it is Zaha as well. Obviously, you two will be more qualified to talk about the Palace players than I will be. But whenever I watch Palace play, your main threat is always from Zaha. When Zaha gets on the ball, you kind of notice the other team kind of switch on a little bit defensively, whereas when you have, say, maybe Andros Townsend running at them, they're all a little bit more relaxed. Then the ball gets played across to Zaha and everyone's on their toes suddenly. And there's a reason for that. And there's a reason he gets double, triple marked by some teams. It's because he's your best player.
Yeah, I saw a great photo after the Wolves game. I think Palace posted it actually on Twitter. It was like that famous Maradona photo. There were 7 players around him, all just staring at him when he has the ball, which is, yeah, as you say, it's ridiculous. So that's probably Grealish. So who's next?
I was just gonna add. I think that's another example of like how you can't fully go off stats with a player because I mean there was like that Antonio versus Zaha debate last week, and I do rate Antonio, but like if teams game plan around like Wilf, and they, as you said, Leon, like put 3 players on him. So yeah, he might not get like the goals and assists, but it's because he's just being totally neutralized half the time.
Yeah. I think you can't really blame the opposition. If I was the manager of, say, Wolves, I'd be going, you've got to have at least 2 on Zaha, at least, at all times. Because if you give him someone one-on-one, he's going to beat him. You see him do it every single season. If he's got there aren't really many right-backs in the league who you'd back to stop Wilfried Zaha in a one-on-one. I mean, even Trent Alexander-Arnold got skinned by him a few times last season or the season before. I remember watching a game and going, this is one of the best right-backs in the world, and he's not stopping Zaha. So everybody has to go 2 on him at once, and you can't really blame the teams for doing that.
Yeah. We got Everton next. Amesy, you can go first for this one.
Yeah, I thought this was one of the hardest ones, actually, because they've got a lot of players up there. I mean, based on kind of past few seasons, you've got to say Richarlison has been one of their best players. And then Digne at left back's been brilliant this season. Dominic Calvert-Lewin's been brilliant. He's been a revelation. But for me, based on his career, based on just how good he is to watch, it has to be James Rodriguez. As we saw at the start of the season, he completely changed the Everton team into a team competing for Europe. And I just think he's top drawer. Just watching him, he's a spectacular footballer.
I went Hammers as well. Like you said, there were a lot of good shouts, and especially Richarlison, given how poor Everton have been the past couple of years when he doesn't play. I don't even know if they've won a game yet when Richarlison has been out. So they might have won once, but yeah, James, just with what he brought to the team when he arrived this summer, you could just see a whole like new type of swagger in the Everton team. So that's why I went with him.
Yeah, for me, it's James Rodriguez as well. I mean, the thing is that he wasn't like an obvious choice, despite the fact all three of us have had him. I think Amesy mentioned obviously Digne and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but I think the midfield partnership of Doucouré and Allen is also a fantastic midfield, and I think you could argue that either of them maybe deserve it. I know Allen had a good few seasons at Napoli before he joined, but
yeah,
I think with James Rodriguez, he was underrated even at Real Madrid and even at Bayern Munich. He was putting up some of the best competitive, some of the best creative stats and some of the best kind of assist stats in Europe at the time. So I think he was underappreciated at those clubs. So to see him come and play in the Premier League is obviously nice for all of us who watch the games, and nice for the Everton fans as well. So yeah, it's Hammers for me.
Yeah, moving on, we have Fulham. I'll kick it off with this one. So I was considering Lookman. I really, really like Lookman. And I think it was harsh because after that failed penalty against West Ham, he was getting absolutely cyberbullied. And I felt bad because I was like, he's a really good player, but this is what everyone knows him for. But I really like him. However, I went with Anguissa. I just think he's a little bit more dynamic, and I don't know. He's just so good on the ball. I think he's top 2 in the league in successful dribbles right now. And I think, especially with a team like Fulham, to have a player like that can really elevate you. And that's really their only chance at survival is Anguissa and probably Lookman. So, but yeah, I went with Anguissa.
Yeah, I had to go for Zambo Anguissa as well. I think he's so good on the ball. He drives them forward. He puts up decent defensive numbers. As you say, his dribbling is probably the main part of his game, which he's so good at. And he's a player I think a lot of clubs would love to have in their squad. For me, in second place, obviously you mentioned Lookman. I think Areola has been brilliant for them in goal. His save percentage is really high. Obviously, I think it's so important for any team coming into the Premier League to have a top-class goalkeeper. I think if you don't, you're straight back down, as we've seen with, Sheffield United. Obviously, it's not their first season in, but losing Dean Henderson, they've struggled so much. And I think Areola's a reason that they're still in this kind of relegation battle. But yeah, for me, Anguissa, it's just top draw.
Yeah, I mean, if I've gone Anguissa as well, but it's interesting you should say about Areola because their substitute keeper Rodak was actually one of the best keepers in the Championship last season, and he was almost he was fantastic. I've got a mate who's a Fulham fan. He was telling me that he's one of the players to watch this season. And then they went on to sign Areola. So I think even at Fulham, they know that what you say about the goalkeepers, that you need to be signing a top quality goalkeeper. Otherwise, you're going to be in trouble. And that's why they brought in Areola, despite Rodak being such a good performer for them.
He's only 24. He's only 24, Rodak as well. So he's definitely got a future.
But I've gone Zambo Anguissa. And it's interesting, Mikey, earlier when we were talking about Basuma, you mentioned that it's rare to see a player like that at a club that low down the league. But I think actually in the Premier League, we have 2. I think we've got Zambo Anguissa and Basuma, who are quite similar players in the way they break up the play and kind of drive their teams forward. And I think they're pretty similar ability as well. And I think they're both good players who if either of the clubs that they're currently at go down in the next couple seasons or so, you'll see them get a fairly big money move to a established Prem side. So yeah, I've gone Zambo Anguissa as well.
Yeah, and now that I pulled up the top dribblers in the league, and he's second after Traore with 3.2 a game, and then Lookman is actually 7th with 2.5 successful dribbles a game. So just kind of shows you how good those 2 players are for Fulham. Let me go look at this alphabetical list. A, B, C, D, E, F.
Leeds next.
Leeds. Okay, yeah, Leeds. Amesy, you want to start?
Yeah, Leeds was, I found another hard one because they've got such a unique style of play. It's hard to kind of cross compare a lot of their players to players of other teams to kind of see how good they are. like for example, I've gone for Calvin Phillips. In his role, he plays loads of long passes, and he's got such a brilliant long pass accuracy that I think he's such a talented player because of that, and also in their system where they do quite often commit loads of men forward, where it's almost like it's 4-on-4 with the defensive line of the other team and Leeds attackers. There is quite a big gap in that midfield, and I think Calvin Phillips has done so well this season to kind of handle that on his own almost. Obviously, he's got a few midfielders in and around him, but I just think in that system, it's a lot of responsibility for him. And at a young age, he's dealt brilliantly with it. Obviously, Bamford's had a great season, but and players like Ayling have really stepped up and Klitsch. But Phillips for me, and I think he definitely deserves his England call up.
Yeah, I'll go. I also want Calvin Phillips, but I did want to point out Bamford because he obviously has double-digit goals already. But I just pulled it up, and he's also missed the most big chances in the league this season. So he has been banging in the goals, but he's missed the most big chances in the league. And I think part of the reason he does have a lot of goals is he's kind of just a product of the Leeds system. Not entirely. He has been a good player this season, but when they've had so many chances to score. So that's a good reason for why he has so many goals. But yeah, I want Calvin Phillips. I think his long passing, like you said, is just exceptional. So I'll pass it on to you, Leon.
Yeah, I mean, I have gone Calvin Phillips as well. I think Amesy really epitomised almost everything I wanted to say about Calvin Phillips, about how he mops up in that system. And they play almost a 4-1-4-1. And when they have that midfield four push forward, I think Klitsch is the second most defensive of the two midfielders. And you'll always see him popping up in the box. So I think for me, Calvin Phillips has done a really good job for a good few seasons since he moved into midfield for Leeds now. So. But other players that I'd like to mention, this was for me the most difficult. There were a lot of players who I could have put in this one, put ahead of Calvin Phillips. So Bamford, obviously, as you say, but what Mikey said, that really gives you a picture of what you need to know about Patrick Bamford. Gets a lot of chances, scores a lot, but misses a lot as well. Players like Rafinha and Jack Harrison. I mean, I think Jack Harrison now has 5 goals and 4 assists this season in 19 games. For his first season in the Premier, it is a fairly decent return. So I think he has to be mentioned as well. I know, as you said, Luke Ayling has been really good at right back and at centre back. So I think Leeds have got a very strong squad. I think it's very consistent, especially in their starting 11. There are a lot of good quality players in that team, and I think that's why they're doing as well as they are this season. But yeah, Calvin Phillips for me as well.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Klitsch as well. But moving on, Manchester City. I'll go. I have.
I just want to say, if we're taping alphabetical, we have missed Leicester.
Yeah, it's Leicester. It's Leicester.
And Liverpool.
Liverpool.
Wow, just struggling out here. Not only alphabetical order. Okay, Leicester. Yeah, I'll go. This was tough. This is really tough because I don't know. I feel like this is going to be debatable, and I might get some pushback on this. But I went with Ndidi.
I thought you would. As a stat man, I could see you going for Ndidi.
I'm a big Ndidi fan. It was obviously hard to not go Vardy. He's such a good player, and yeah, I mean, it was like neck and neck with me. I really couldn't make a decision between these two, but I don't know, like we said about Basuma and Brighton, I just think Ndidi, what he provides to Leicester is so unique, and that he just without him, we've seen this season how average they are. Not saying they'd be good without Vardy either, but I don't know. Part of it is me just kind of want to mix it up a little bit as well. So let's hear what you guys have.
Yeah, I mean, I went for Vardy over him. I think he's just such a sensational goal scorer, whether it's from the spot, in open play, any kind of chance you give him, he just smashes it away. That's why he's in the Premier League 100 club. Also, gave a shout out to Maddison as well. I think he's having quite an underrated season. But, they've got quality all throughout their squad. As you say, indeed, is incredible. And for our combined, list, I'll be happy to put either of them in, to be honest. I'd like to hear what Leon has to say about it.
So for me, I've gone Jamie Vardy, but I would have also been happy to accept Ndidi if you'd have both gone for Ndidi. But for me, it has to be Vardy. I mean, his goal scoring record at the age of 34, he still has that explosive pace, and I think his goal scoring record is fantastic, and it has been for season after season now since they really won the league, or even maybe the season before. I think he had a few good goals towards the end of the season. But yeah, for me, it has to be Vardy. He got the Golden Boot last season. He is 11th this season. He's got 11 goals this season, which is fantastic. I know he's just gone out to have some surgery, but it'll be interesting to see how he performs when he returns from that. But I think Ndidi is obviously a fantastic defensive midfielder, but he has been out. He's only played, I think, 10 or 11 games this season, and I think Leicester have been fantastic without him. And I think they do miss Vardy more than they miss Ndidi, and that's why I have gone for Jamie Vardy, based off a few reasons, but potentially off that one as well.
Yeah, okay, we'll go for Vardy then, but I think they're both kind of top 3 in the league in their position, arguably.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, totally fine with going Vardy for our combined list as well. Moving on to Liverpool, Leon, you can go ahead.
So I've gone with Virgil van Dijk. I think all you have to do is look at their achievements before and after he joined. I think he was also underrated at Southampton. I think he was one of the best centre-halves in the league at his time at Southampton. I think he just got the mainstream appreciation when he came to Liverpool. But for me, Virgil van Dijk is best centre-back in the world, has been for a couple of years now. He is an absolutely fantastic player and leader at the back, and I think you've really noticed the difference when he's gone out. I think they could have lost any other player in their team, and they would have still been at the top of the table. And I think they've kind of gone off the pace a little bit this season. I think losing Van Dijk's the reason for that. So yeah, it's Van Dijk for me.
Oh, Liverpool's so tough. I mean, with all respect to like Thiago, Alisson, and Mane, and Trent, I did manage to whittle it down to 2. I think for me it's between Van Dijk and Salah. I think both of those players have a shout for being in the best Premier League 11 of all time. Like, they've been that good for Liverpool for a few seasons now. For me, I've gone for Van Dijk because just watching him, he was just an absolute machine. There's nothing he couldn't do. As Leon said, he improved their team so much. But yeah, 2 top players there.
Yeah, as you said, Amesy, I had it narrowed down to Salah and Van Dijk, but I did go with Van Dijk. I just think that, like you said, I mean, if you're looking from an unbiased perspective, I think it's easy to say that as once his time is up, that you should be putting Virgil van Dijk in the Premier League all-time starting 11, or at the very least right there, because he's been that good. He's been a top 5 center back in Premier League history. I mean, I can't remember in the past handful of years a center back being as good as Virgil van Dijk across Europe. Obviously before him, Ramos, but yeah, I think we've seen this season so far how his absence has affected Liverpool. I do want to give a shout out to Salah. He's incredible, and he's been doing it for, I mean, almost a handful of years now. So, but yeah, I went with Van Dijk in the end.